When you live with diabetes, avoiding certain foods like bread and pastries can be complicated. After all, who doesn't get tempted by the look and smell of freshly baked bread? But wait, isn't bread popular for being rich in carbohydrates? Diabetics know that eating bread will probably spike blood sugar, but contrary to what most people believe, diabetics can also enjoy bread without impacting their health. But what type of bread should you eat? And what do you need to stay away from? Don't go rushing to the bakery just yet. Watch this video as we explore the 4 worst breads diabetics should definitely avoid and the 5 best breads you can eat with diabetes and how they influence your blood sugar. Plus, you'll learn some unexpected facts about sourdough bread, so don't go anywhere. But before we dive in, can you do us a favor and like this video, ring the bell for future notifications, and make sure to subscribe to Diabetics Talk for more help in managing diabetes. Plus, stick around to find out how you can get 2 free gifts. Now, let's get started with the 4 worst breads for diabetics. Number 4, gluten-free bread. It is common to think that gluten is the cause of the high carbohydrate count found in bread. But just because a slice of bread doesn't contain any gluten doesn't mean it's better for diabetics. Gluten-free products can negatively impact your blood glucose levels in the same way regular bread would. So what do you really need to be aware of when it comes to gluten-free bread options? When a loaf of bread is labeled gluten-free, it implies that it doesn't contain any gluten protein that can be found in grains like rye, barley, and oat. But in order to compensate for the lack of grain, gluten-free bread might include more saturated fat like butter, salt, and added sugars. So while not all gluten-free options are created equal, this bread option has been proven to increase the risk and symptoms for diabetes. Harvard researchers investigated the impact of gluten on diabetics. After monitoring 3 studies involving more than 200,000 participants, their research showed that those who ate less than 12 grams of gluten per day were diagnosed with type 2 diabetes within 10 years. They also noted that a lack of gluten implied a lack of fiber. And if you're a diabetic, you know that a lack of fiber causes your body to absorb food more quickly, resulting in high blood sugar. So before you consider eating gluten-free bread, make sure to look at what it contains, because gluten-free doesn't always mean healthy. Number 3, bagels. Bagels are a popular breakfast or lunch option on the go. Topped with vegetables, meat, or fish, it would seem like bagels should be a decent bread option for diabetics. But the reality is that bagels can have a detrimental impact on your blood glucose levels, no matter what you eat them with. A typical bagel is made of refined wheat flour, salt and water, yeast, and certain bagels will come with added spices, sugar, or dried fruit. In order to make bagels, a frying process will also be required. As a result, bagels are high in carbs and saturated fat. And for diabetics, this can lead to a strong spike in blood sugar. So while there is no research on bagels and diabetes in particular, it has been widely shown that food containing a high amount of refined carbohydrates like bagels increase the risk and complication of type 2 diabetes. So if you're craving a bagel sandwich, there are plenty of other bread options beside bagels that you can enjoy as a diabetic. And we'll share our 5 best in a bit. Now let's look at another type of bread you should avoid. Number 2, brioche bread. If you're browsing the bakery section of your local grocery store, chances are you have come across brioche bread. Brioche bread includes egg and milk bread, any pastries filled with butter, burger buns, croissants, and viennoiserie. All are considered brioche bread. Brioche bread usually comes with a soft and rich texture. They look so yummy and appealing, but they must be avoided by diabetics. This type of bread requires a large amount of dairy, saturated fat, refined white flour, and sugar in order to create its fluffy white dough. This means that when you eat brioche bread, you will consume a high amount of carbohydrates. We all know that consuming foods with a low glycemic index is key to lowering blood sugar, but with brioche bread, it is difficult to do that. For example, a burger bun is classified with a high glycemic index of 61, and that's without including the other foods added to make a hamburger. So, should you skip brioche bread altogether when you have diabetes? We believe so. But along with that, there's another type of bread you need to stay clear from, and that's number 1, white bread. While most of the bread we've seen so far can be considered white, regular loaf, sandwich bread, and baguettes are the most popular form of white bread. And unfortunately, it is also the most detrimental for people with diabetes. There are 2 common types of carbohydrates, simple and complex. While complex carbohydrates will come in the form of starchy food like potatoes and whole grain, white bread is categorized as a simple carbohydrate and contains a high amount of refined starch. And as a diabetic, a few things can happen when you consume refined starch. Your body breaks down the food into sugar really quickly, and the B cells in your pancreas are triggered to secrete insulin. This results in a rapid spike in blood sugars. A study published by the Oxford Academy observed how the quality of starch impacted women with diabetes. They compared various trials involving more than 70,000 women and noted that refined starch increased the risk and complication of diabetes. However, the study also showed that consuming whole starch helped maintain steady health, thanks to the high fiber that it contains. So while it's clear that white bread and the refined starch it brings into our body should be avoided by diabetics, it seems that perhaps consuming bread made from whole starch could be beneficial. But what types of bread are made that way? That's what we're going to look at with the 5 best breads for diabetics. But before we jump in, are you ready for your free gifts? Discover an entire world of diabetes-fighting foods with our new book, 10 Incredible Foods That Reduce Blood Sugar. Plus, you'll discover the real reasons why type 2 diabetes, cancer, heart illness, dementia, and obesity are increasing at a terrifying rate, and find out what really works when it comes to preventing these illnesses by watching our free 1-hour documentary, The Scary Truth About Sugar. Both gifts are free and waiting for you. Simply click the link in the description below to grab both. And now let's explore the best bread for diabetics and how they can be beneficial in controlling your blood sugar. Number 5, sourdough bread. You might not think that sourdough bread is good for people with diabetes. After all, it is still a controversial type of bread among scientists. But when we compare it to white bread, sourdough is a much better option for your blood sugar. While the yeast used for white bread breaks down quickly in the body, sourdough is digested more slowly thanks to its baking process. To make sourdough, the yeast is fermented with acids that eat up the sugar found in the flour. Additionally, sourdough bread is often made with whole flour, such as spelt or whole wheat. A regular sourdough recipe will therefore average a low glycemic index of 53, and it has been shown that sourdough causes a slower rise in blood sugar compared to the spike you can experience with white bread. So does that mean you can eat sourdough bread without restriction? Not quite, as sourdough bread still provides a high amount of carbohydrate. Doctors recommend limiting sourdough consumption to 1 slice a day and monitoring glucose response, as carbohydrate tolerance will vary from person to person. Number 4, whole grain bread. Whole grain bread has been around for thousands of years. Today, this type of bread has heavily been replaced by white and refined options. Whole grain bread is beneficial in many ways, especially for diabetics. Whole grain style bread is commonly made of cereals, corn, barley, millet, or wheat. And unlike refined bread, whole grain implies that the grain it contains is used in its entire form. A grain is made of 3 parts: the bran, which is the outer shell of the grain that contains fibers, minerals, and antioxidants; the endosperm, which is the middle layer of the grain made of carbohydrates; and finally, the germ, which contains vitamins and proteins. And for diabetics, eating grains in their whole form has shown to reduce the risk of obesity, heart problems, and complications for type 2 diabetes. A review of 16 studies on whole grain bread published in 2013 observed that eating 2 servings of whole grain bread per day could reduce chronic inflammation, lower fasting blood sugar, and improve insulin sensitivity. So, with its whole composition, high in fibers and minerals, whole grain bread can be a great option to integrate into your diet, as long as you eat it in moderation. Number 3, rye bread. With its darker color and earthy taste, a rye loaf of bread is a great option to explore with those with diabetes. Rye bread is made of rye grains, which are rich in soluble fibers, whole starch carbohydrates, and vitamin B. This type of grain is easier on blood sugar levels, as rye bread is filling and digested slowly by the body. In a study published in 2017, researchers observed that rye slowed the release of sugar and insulin in the bloodstream after giving healthy adults rye bread for dinner. But does that apply to people with type 2 diabetes? A clinical trial on rats focused on this question. Giving rye bread to one group of diabetic rats and white bread to another, scientists looked at their glucose response 15 minutes after consumption. As a result, they noted that a large amount of starch remained in the stomach of rats who consumed rye bread. They also observed that the rats' glucose levels were slower to rise compared to those who consumed white bread. So while we still recommend being mindful of the amount of bread you consume, a rye loaf can be a safe and beneficial way to enjoy bread. Number 2, soy linseed bread. With its white bread look and seed filling, soy linseed bread is a great alternative for people with diabetes. This type of loaf is rich in protein. In fact, the soy flour used to make soy linseed bread contains 30 to 50 grams of protein per cup. It is also filled with fiber and omega-3 fatty acids, thanks to the linseed included in the dough. So while soy linseed bread may look like seeded white bread, it is more beneficial for digestion and blood sugar. An Australian study looked at a group of middle-aged women who had bad LDL cholesterol and triglycerides. After giving them soy linseed bread daily for 8 weeks, researchers found that their LDL cholesterol had steadily reduced by 7%. Bad LDL cholesterol can increase complications in managing diabetes and blood sugar levels. So while it is still important to monitor your glucose response with any bread, eating soy linseed bread in moderation may be nourishing and beneficial for diabetics. And if you enjoy seeded bread, then you should definitely try this. Number 1, sprouted multigrain bread. There's nothing better than finding a freshly baked loaf of sprouted multigrain bread. It's filled with healthy grains, so there's no need for diabetics to turn away. Multigrain breads are made with whole grain flour and a variety of grains such as wheat, barley, chia seeds, flax seeds, or spelt. During the baking process, the grains are first sprouted and then used in their whole form. This creates a nutritionally rich loaf that you can't find in other bread. Sprouted multigrain bread provides your body with more protein, fiber, and antioxidants. In fact, the process of sprouting grains has a lot of benefits for people with diabetes. Various studies have shown that sprouting different grains changes their nutritional qualities. So when you combine sprouted grains together in a multigrain dough, the bread is easier to digest, has fewer carbohydrates, and it's gentle on your blood sugar levels. So if you're craving bread, a sprouted multigrain option is the way to go. But remember, much like any food you eat, it is important to monitor how your body responds to bread in order to adjust the quantity you eat and find the option that works best for you. So, what is your favorite bread as a diabetic? Let us know in the comments below. And before you leave, make sure to claim your 2 free gifts. Click the link in the description below. And don't forget to subscribe and hit that bell button to get the latest updates and videos from Diabetics Talk. Thanks for watching. We hope you're having a diabetes fighting day.